This is Lacey Everett here with Minds in Motion. In order to help others, subscribe, which is free, so we can continue building our positive mental health community. Share it with friends and family so they can reap of the benefits as well. I truly care about your success, so I would love to see your comments and thoughts. Chase Peterson ran track and field for both the University of Southern California and Duke University. Chase represented both schools at the Pacific 12 and ACC championships, specializing in the 400-meter hurdles and the 4x400-meter relay. Chase holds a Bachelor of Arts in Communication from USC and a Master's of Public Policy from Duke University. Making the transition away from D1 student athlete, Chase now works in renewable energy, supporting wind and solar projects across North America. Wow. Here he is. Hi, Chase.
Hi, Lacey. How are you?
So I thought we could just start with talking about your mental headspace. Mm-hmm. So you're a runner, a really good one at that. And I'm just curious about, he's humble. I'm just curious about what your mindset is like when you're about to go to a race or when you're about to start, and how you prepare for that, because I think that would be really beneficial for other athletes in your position.
Yeah, it's funny. I think being away from it now and looking back on what that took. And I think a lot of the challenges and kind of looking through my career of, when I was really with it and when I had a really good day, what that meant, and when I was really off, what that meant. And it really wasn't until I kind of concluded and moved away from running that I really understood it. But, on race day, the only thing you think about is running. Right? But I think in a very technical kind of way. And it is sort of what you want in a capacity where you just want to be really pretty clear. You want to have a really clear headspace. You want to be able to just continue to follow objectives. And so, hey, I got to start warming up 3 hours early, right? And in that 3 hours, you're thinking, okay, well, how am I feeling in terms of fluids? How am I feeling in terms of how do my hamstrings feel as compared to my quads, as compared to my calves? And you just keep following these very objective things. It's like, okay, I need to be spiked up and on the track 20 minutes before the competition. And so you want to be in a place where you're just implementing a pattern that you've known all the way up until this point. And I think the only way that you can really get there is by practicing that every single time you're in practice. And practicing, when you're at practice, you're there to run. Even at times, when it's really positive, to get out some of your underlying frustrations and feelings and kind of leave all that on the track. You got to really be able to pull yourself away from that and then move into this much more logical, much more fact-based kind of outcome day to day.
That mindset when you're in your practices, and most people think, oh, I'm here, mistakes can happen. I'm here to lounge, hang out with friends. But for you to have that mindset as a practice is my performance, that's pretty impressive.
I think it's the idea of being a professional. Right? When you show up to practice, and it's when you're in high school, when you're in college, when you are a professional, right? You need to come to practice as if this is your job. And we always like to say that, President has his Oval Office and this is mine, right? We're coming here to do work.
Great. That's great.
And that is kind of like the mentality. So it's not to say that, the externalities of life don't come in. And have effects in practice, and bad days happen and you lose focus and all that. It happens. But the point is that you need to leave that to the side and you need to practice on just being as objective as possible, as clear as possible.
Nice.
When you're there on the track.
So how do you do that? Every time you go to one of your practices, you're kind of trying to leave everything out, and the more you do it, your brain kind of accumulates to that?
Yeah, I would say that's a good place to start with, right? The first thing is, of course, putting yourself in the headspace of, no, I'm coming here to train. I'm coming here to run. I'm not coming here to continue to think about, economics homework, for example, right? But I do think the second part about it is this bigger idea of like having a sense of self, and learning how to be comfortable in your own skin. Because it's tough, I think, walking out there in front of a big crowd who, is cheering for you when you're running down the home stretch, but all the attention's right on you. And in the moment that you screw up, they're all going to see it. In the moment that you win, they're all going to see it at the same time. And so I think that takes, as an individual, a certain level of self-comfort to be able to get out there and execute on these very logical, reasonable, and not very emotional kind of traits.
This is great, Chase. This is, I mean, yeah, I think it's really important because that's a prominent thing right now with athletes is, oh, who's watching me? Or, oh, mom's in the bleachers, or my friends are over there, or I'm on TV. And a lot of self-criticism comes into play. So that's really interesting that you brought that up. It's about having a strong sense of self. Is it just through years of practice, or are there any tools or things that you use to kind of get in that zone?
Yeah, I mean, I'm tremendously self-critical. I'm to a fault, absolutely. And it extended into athletics, it extends into my personal life, it extends into my professional life. I mean, that's something that I think always drives me as an individual. It's just one of my personality traits, is being self-critical. So, to move past that is multifaceted. And it does require, I think, some level of blind faith, right? In terms of, you're going to get through it, you're going to get over it, whatever.
I love your wording.
But I think one of the other parts about it is recognizing, when you do a sport in school, no one else is going through what you're going through. And that takes a tremendous amount of courage, effort, and ability. And I think it's important for athletes to really look in on themselves and recognize, like, hey, I'm doing a great thing just by showing up and being consistent, right? And that consistency day in, day out, to come to practice, to keep coming to meets, and then to get beat up and then keep coming back is something to really celebrate.
I love that because I feel like the way our society is, it's very go, 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 accomplish, 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 on to the next thing. And everyone kind of focuses more on what they have accomplished versus how they got there. And I think how they got there is the most important part. I mean, that's the part that involves the perseverance and the part that builds character, just like you're saying.
Right. Yeah, track and field is inevitably measured by a number. It's a distance, it's a time, it's a height, right? Depending on your event. And so for me, the 52:04, the 47:3, right? I know to a point, like, just how objectively good that I was or could be, right? I think at some point you recognize, if you recognize there's only so many world records and you're not always going to be the one who has it, or you might never have it, you have to find the things that you celebrate along the way. And I think, really good athletes, strive for the gold, strive for the greatest, but enjoy the process along the way. And that takes a kind of contextualizing, a kind of ability to look out on a longer time horizon. And then also to be able to reflect and enjoy your accomplishments along the way.
Wow. I I want to say thank you for saying that, because that's something that a lot of athletes, non-athletes, people in general struggle with. It's kind of like going on a hike. It's people going on the hike and trying to get to the top and just focusing on the top and never stopping for a break, versus people like you and successful athletes who, okay, take breaks, enjoy the scenery while they're on the hike until they
Yeah.
get to the top, and things like that. So you made a really good point there. I think that's so important, because once you get there, it's great, but it's like, okay, what next?
Yeah, it's boring.
You know?
Yeah, and I can tell you that was kind of how I felt. My dream was to run track for USC. And then when I got there, it's kind of like, okay, now I have to come up with more goals, which I had, right? But the big one had happened. And that's a challenge. That's a challenge once you have to kind of keep setting it along the way. So for me, enjoying the process and understanding just how much there was along the way was really important.
Wow. I think that's remarkable, and I applaud you for that, because that's hard to do. And I am really grateful that I get to interview you and that you said that, because I think a lot of people would benefit from that. There was another thing I wanted to ask, because every athlete has a struggle or a challenge that they overcome. So I was curious if you've had one and you could talk about how you overcame that mentally, because physical challenges are so hard and they're the worst at times, but sometimes the mental challenges are just as hard. So I'm wondering if you could speak on that.
Yeah, I mean, so as I mentioned, my dream was to run for USC.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth generation Trojan. My dad, my late father, swam for USC. My high school coach was a 3-time Olympian from USC. That's where I was going. That's what I wanted to do. And when I got there, my experience was disappointing. The coach that recruited me left in the summer before I came. And so there was a whole turnover. And, I look back on everything that happened at the time, and, inevitably I was kind of, there were things I look back on and would have done differently. But I also recognize that, as in everything in life, politics come into play. And so had I known earlier what was to come, I think I would have done or considered to do things differently, gone to a different school. But I left the USC team after my freshman year, and I had a really pretty good freshman year. I was 9th in the country for juniors. I was 4th in the Pac-12.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was up there on, USC's all-time list for the 400 hurdles. But the challenge with that was coaching staff didn't really value it. And the things that I was looking for and the things that I wanted to be better at, I just didn't get the same kind of support. So I spent 2 years training down at the Olympic Training Center 100 miles away. And that had this weird, like, I'm competing at this higher level and trying to train at this higher level, but I'm also like an undergraduate student, and I don't have the support network that's normally afforded to you at a D1 school. I wasn't near my coach, and that's where I decided to leave and go to Duke. So I graduated in 3 years and then pursued a master's degree with both years of the eligibility that I had remaining. And that transition was tremendously difficult. To get back in workouts, you have flashbacks of the really poor things that happened at USC. I spoke to a sports psychologist at Duke. That was one of the things that was really, really helpful at the time, was reaching out and hearing from my teammates, hey, we got this guy who's just tremendously helpful. You should go talk to him. Removing that stigma and going to talk to someone about, like, I'm just having a hard time getting out on the track. I'm having a hard time forgiving myself when I have a bad workout. I'm having a hard time compartmentalizing track from school. So for me, I think it was making that transition over. And in that time and doing these different things, I lost some of my ability. It just comes with time. And so inevitably, like learning to forgive myself and enjoy what I had was a tremendous positive. And I look back on my experience at Duke as, one of the most worthwhile things I've ever done. So I'm really happy for that.
Wow. I think I'm speechless for a second, so I'm just gonna collect. I mean, that was noteworthy. Like we were talking about earlier, it's not what you accomplish, it's how you get there. And that was a perfect example, which
Mm-hmm.
builds so much resilience in someone.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to go through that, that's pretty inspiring, to say the least.
It took a lot, but I was definitely supported by a lot of great people at the time too.
What was it like for you to go to a sports psychologist?
It was a really, it was a really positive experience. The strange thing about it was it never fully felt like it was like you're going to see a psychologist, right? Like you're going to see someone who's deconstructing your mind, right? It was more like, hey, tell me about your experience and let me tell you about some of the experiences that I've previously had. And so while he was able to deconstruct some of the things that I was, struggling with and tease it out, right, it wasn't through this, I want to use the word clinical, through
Mm-hmm.
this kind of clinical lens of like, hey, here's what's wrong with you.
So we actually learn about that in school. And in
Mhm.
my doctorate program for psychology, we learn about that, how to build rapport with a patient so it kind of, they feel safe, they feel more comfortable. And through that, you can get more out of them.
Yeah.
They're not as resisted to speaking about their past. And it seems like your sports psychologist did that wonderfully because it helped you. So
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. hmm It's very humanizing.
it sounded like you had a lot of struggle, but I think it's really important that people take note of what you say with your struggles and how you got through it, because I'm sure a lot of people go through the same thing to some degree.
Yeah, transferring is definitely something that is pretty common in, when you get out of high school. And I also maintain that it's a really positive thing too. If the academic program isn't working for you, it's worth transferring. If your athletic program isn't working for you, it's worth transferring. If you have extra eligibility and another school wants to pay you to go use that and you can do it, 1 year or start a 2 year, 3 year master's, that's worth it. So that transition, however, is tough. And I think acknowledging it, talking about it, and expressing what you're struggling with is important too, as is anything starting a new gig.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. I noticed about your stories was how you're really open to talking about your struggles. And it sounds like throughout your lifetime, you sought out a sports psychologist, and you just mentioned it's about being aware and talking about things. Do you think that helped you a lot with your challenge, was talking about it?
Yeah, I think generally being open when you're having a tough time is a good move to go down. The people who are going to disrespect you are less important than the people who are going to respect what you're saying. I think it's always important to kind of say like, hey, okay, hold on, pause, right? Because if you don't outwardly acknowledge these things, they're going to manifest inside you internally still, right? And
Repression.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And to be able to clear the air with the people who aren't, if they're not causing it, they might have an influence on it in one capacity or another, is a tremendously like valuable and important skill. that can make you feel really vulnerable, but is otherwise a valuable thing to do. It's something that I took from, I think, my personal life and then brought into track and field, and have since kind of brought it into the professional work that I do now. And it's really helped me with creating relationships with the people I work with, and feeling like they know me, and feeling like I can ask for help when I don't understand things or otherwise need them to stay up late to do something, you know? So
Yes.
that's helpful. Yeah.
Learning to ask for help and not be in our own stubborn minds.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That is wonderful. Is there anything else that you would like to say to the viewers or to any athletes in general? The big takeaway, words of wisdom from Chase Peterson?
I think the most important thing is that no one can do what you're doing but you.
Ooh.
And we all have our challenges. And no one really understands how tough it is to be Chase. No one knows how difficult it is to be Lacey. No one knows how difficult it is to, outwardly appear in any capacity in the world. And no one can do it better than you can. So I think it's tremendously important that we celebrate the things that we do well, to reflect on the things that we did poorly, but leave them in the past, and carry forward with us this belief that we want to be better, and a recognition that we will, learning from our mistakes and celebrating our accomplishments that we will. So that's one of the things I wish I could tell myself when I was 16 years old. Forgive yourself, move on, look at all the good things you did, and just keep going. Yeah.
Oh, encore! That was poetic. I mean, I couldn't agree more, Chase, and recognize that you can be better. Don't beat yourself up about it. Leave it in the past. Things that you were expressing. I think that is wonderful for viewers to hear. So I appreciate your time, Chase. And I love that you're wearing your Duke shirt.
Thanks, Lacey.
This is Lacey Everett here with Minds in Motion. In order to help others, subscribe, which is free, so we can continue building our positive mental health community. Share it with friends and family so they can reap of the benefits as well. I truly care about your success, so I would love to see your comments and thoughts.